Welcome to Fear and Greed, the week ahead. I'm Sean Aylmer, and as always, I'm joined by economist Stephen Koukoulas. You'll find him at thekook.com and on X using the handle thekook. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning to you, Sean.
What do you make of those labour force figures last week?
They were the proverbial data release that had something for everyone. If you wanted to be upbeat on the economy, we're doing fine, and gee, the RBA might have to hike again, you would focus on the plus 50,000 in employment, because that's a pretty impressive result. If you wanted to say, well, hang on, the economy appears to be slowing, the unemployment rate is more important because that employment numbers being inflated by this surge in immigration, the strong population growth. So the unemployment rate is still the residual of people who are unemployed as a proportion of the labour force, and it went up from 4.0% to 4.1%, meaning that it's gone up 0.6 percentage points over the last 12 months. And curiously, when I look at the US, guess what's happened to its unemployment rate in the last 12 months? 3.5 to 4.1. Australia, 3.5 to 4.1. And then, Sean, I superimposed monetary policy expectations on that. Fed expected to cut rates in September, again before the end of the year, another 4 or 5 rate cuts in 2025. We're still talking rate hikes.
Okay, so that's what the market's pricing in. What do you think will happen, Stephen?
Look, I'm in that latter camp. I think the unemployment rate's important, and even though we had the plus 50,000 jobs and the like, we still have the other news on the economy. It's weak. Annual GDP growth 1.5%. Retail sales weak. Consumer sentiment weak. Business confidence weak. Housing approvals weak. So you look through the run rate of all these indicators on the economy, and they are still tilting quite squarely to the downside of the economy, and that's a problem to me. Of course, all eyes are on the 31st of July here in Australia. We get the June quarter CPI numbers. They're probably going to be a little bit elevated. We know that from the monthly numbers. We know that from things like petrol prices and the like. But look, I think there's enough going on in economic activity, unemployment, for the RBA just to have a cup of tea, a bit of a lie down, and wait and see how the economy pans out in the second half of 2024.
A cup of tea and a Bex for the Reserve Bank. I like that idea. I like that idea. We don't actually have a lot of data coming out this week. It's a very quiet week. I suppose we're all going. I know is it the Central Bank of Canada doing an interest rate decision? Is that right?
Yeah. There's nothing locally. We get the weekly consumer sentiment numbers, and they're sort of interesting, but there's nothing of note that's going to move the markets or influence the RBA, other than, as you quite rightly pointed out, we've got a Bank of Canada decision, and they've already cut rates. Don't forget, they trimmed rates at their last meeting. The Canadian economy is weakening more than in Australia. Their unemployment rate's spiking. We had the Canadian unemployment rate 6.4%. So the market's betting that they'll probably cut rates again. So that'll be interesting to see if they do, what sort of rhetoric they put around, because, of course, guess who Canada's major trading partner is? The US. So the linkages from Canada to the US are still very, very important. So in a week when there's not much domestically going on, we'll be looking overseas for news, information, policy decisions.
Do you reckon the Reserve Bank cares that overseas jurisdictions are cutting rates? Does it matter to them much?
Look, it's not unimportant. They don't. They do not move in lockstep with the Fed and the Bank of England, the ECB, whatever. But if everyone, or 8 out of 10 banks around the world are cutting interest rates, they're doing it for a reason. Growth and inflation are the two, of course, that drive interest rates being lowered. And so you've got this sort of scenario that if we've got, the ECB, even though they left rates steady last week, they cut them the month before. Sweden's been cutting rates, Switzerland's been cutting rates. And as I said, rate cuts are being priced into the US, UK. New Zealand had a low inflation number last week. So we've got rate cuts priced in everywhere. The RBA would look at that and say, well, what's it mean for Australia? We're an export economy. Exports are important to us, and we import goods that are priced in the global market, or many of them are. So if their inflation rate is falling overseas enough for the Bank of Canada and all these other central banks to cut rates, it does sway them, even though they do not move in lockstep with what's happening in the US, for example.
Fair enough. Well, Stephen, enjoy this quieter week. What do you do when there's no economic data out? Do you put your feet up? I dare say no.
Clear out my email junk, and unfortunately, middle of winter, there's no cricket to sort of while away 7 or 8 hours during the day.
Yeah, well, enjoy it.
Thanks, mate.
That was economist Stephen Koukoulas, better known as The Kook. You can find him at thekook.com, TheKouk, thekook.com, and follow him on X using the handle The Kook. I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is Fear and Greed, the week ahead.